Hi, Mike. Thanks for coming on. Can you give us a brief introduction of you, your role, and how you got into the role, first of all?
Oh, yeah. So I'm Mike Melvin. I'm the managing director of 3v3 UK, part owner of 3v3 Europe, 3v3 World. How it all started was just looking for something better for my teams at the time. So my teams were under sevens, under eights. We were playing the normal formats and we're quite busy and a good little group. Come across a 3v3 tournament locally, entered that. Kids absolutely just loved it. And I just fell in love with it there and then. At the same time, I run a futsal league. And with obviously 5v5, the bigger nets and so on, which was good. And there was loads of benefits on futsal for the kids. But it just wasn't, I knew there was always something a bit better. So we changed the futsal league into a futsal free league. And we played, in effect, 3 pitches on a futsal court. We then partnered with Bazooka Goal, because they brought out these air pitches. If there was a problem with 3v3, it was like the time the ball spent out of play, just because of how close, the games were and how fast. So, by having the air pitches, it kept the ball in play. We've seen massive improvement in players, and I always have my coach's hat on, first, is like what's better for players from obviously the technical side. But then most importantly, and always been a big part of what I wanted to do, was just making it fun.
Let's delve into the 3v3. What is it about 3v3 that makes it such a great development tool for players and coaches?
When you break down the bigger format of the game, and obviously going then up to 11-a-side, and you'll see it, there's a lot of interaction on a bigger pitch where there's 3 players. Okay, so most things you'll do on a bigger pitch, you can replicate that in a small-sided game. Yet there's some things in that you don't get, the great returns from, big cross-field switches and shooting in bigger nets and stuff. But a lot of the game, what goes on, you can break that down into 2v2 and into 3v3. So that repetition of what players need to practice for a bigger game, you can get. And just there, I've said it over and over again, and I will do repetition, the amount of time that you can practice, whether it's an individual move, a team move, an overlap, anything like that, you can repeat it more times at 3v3 in a game realistic situation than you could do in, whether you were doing a one-to-one or you were doing a big, team game. You can just, have more repetition for players. Just build up that muscle memory of what they've done, what they need to do, body position, ball position, teammates position, oppositions. There's loads of things that will happen, and 3v3 just gives you that constant repetition to practice these moves in. So I'll go through the rules of what we play so people can adopt them. But I say, there's just what I decided in effect. We've adapted them probably over the years, but. So we start the game by players touching the net, and then kick-off is a race to the ball. Okay, that's how we do kick-off. You can't score in your own half. So again, it just stops them players just whacking it and booting it. So you've got to be in the opposition half before you can score. When your team does score, and this is where this part of this fitness comes in, this disguised running, what we force, is we make the players run back and touch their net. Okay. So they have this extra work to do, okay? But it also then gives the other team time and a bit of free time to bring the ball out before someone's back on them again. So if the ability levels are, uneven, the team conceding a lot of goals will still get plenty of opportunities to bring the ball out, okay? If it goes out of play, it's a kicking, and all kickings are just pass or dribble. So again, you'll see cleverer players put the ball down and boom, dribble away, they're off. Okay. Only the rules that we have, any foul in the opposition half is a penalty. And no standing in your net as a goalie. Okay. And again, just the reason we do the penalty rule is to try and, a lot of it then is like kids sliding in, and we've mentioned it before about being rubbish at defending. It's just trying to encourage kids to tackle properly, because if they don't and they get a foul, it's generally a goal because a penalty is a halfway line, open net shot. They're generally the rules, but like I say, different constraints you could put in if it was a training game, but they're like our tournament rules then. 3v3 is a dead easy game to set up, right, for someone with no football experience at all. Could put out them 4 cones and go, there's the ball in the middle, use three, go and play. Right? And that could be, a part of the training session, or all of the training session, because within that game, you can then do, say, different constraints, overload it 4v2, make one team a dribbling team, so they've only got a dribble, make one team a passing team, but they've got to focus on passing, use that other foot the other time. Within that game, there's no one stood in a queue, there's no one waiting a turn, there's no one getting bored and then messing around. I have kids, I have groups, and I've done it in the past. I'm up to 30 kids. And people say, "How can you do that?" I go, because they're constantly involved. They don't have time to mess about. So I'm not then going to tell one off and wasting everyone's time.
You got any examples of like those players that played 3v3 and then got into a different format and seen maybe some crossover or progress?
One of the biggest things we get back, but there's 2 things that I'll give some examples, is the speed at which players operate, and the confidence that players now have. Now, most of these kids, regardless of what setup they're in, they'll practice these individual skills, all right? But then rarely, whether you're in from a one-to-one setting or in a group team setting, you might practice, a 1v1 example, going past a player, but it's not game realistic then, okay? Because again, if it is just 1v1, you'll be that player and then you stop. It's what happens next, right? Most people can go past one, but generally, not on the pitch, you've then got something else, another decision to make after that. So we see that all the time, and a big part, I said it before, is confidence then. Players now have confidence in their own ability to go and try something. And that's something we always encourage. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake, 99 times, you're getting better each time, and just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And then we celebrate, when it works. And then you see them, and whether it's the parents' feedback or coaches who come back to us and just saying, can't believe, how well this player or this group of players have been doing. I'm getting feedback from the parents, just how much better the players are now playing. They play 7-a-side as their normal format, and just how much better they're playing in their Saturday games as well.
Obviously, there's repetition, but for me, what stands out is just the intensity of the game that's played at, and therefore that probably forces players to have to make decisions a lot quicker. So, is there anything else that 3v3 gives you that what makes them improve?
That constant involvement, I'd say, then is something that, again, we don't, we didn't, when we started, it wasn't something that we picked up a lot on. But when you go and watch some players play bigger formats, especially young kids, they'll switch off in a game, because they've not touched the ball, and it might only be 3 minutes that they've not touched the ball for, but in a kid's life, that's forever for some of them. And then when it does come to them, it's either, a panic, let's just get rid of it, or, it's like a hot potato, they don't know what to do with it then. So that constant, like say, involvement in the game just makes, kids then just be switched on, all the time. So it's something that, it's probably hard to measure, but when you watch the players before the play, say whether it's 5v5 or 7v7, then you watch them do some 3v3 sessions and then go back to 5v5. Now, whether that's because of the confidence now that they've now got, the improved fitness.
I get a lot of questions around defending at such a young age group. And I'm the same. Stick them in a play 3v3, because whilst we look at number of touches, actually the number of 1v1 duels, the amount of times that you will get to practice staying on your feet or getting side on and failing, but having to improve quite quickly, just because the number of repetitions there are at 1v1 duels, whether you've got the ball or whether you haven't. So from a technical aspect, there's no doubt it doubles, trebles the number of goes that you get when you're comparing it to 5v5 or 7v7 and 9v9.
The amount of clips we see online where players are doing all these skills, beating players, you go, it's virtually a mannequin that they're going and only pass. Some of these kids just don't know how to defend, you know. So yeah, that defending side of the game, which is half of what the game, you know, generally is. Winning the ball back, like I say, you get just that repetition of practicing it, where you can then help, you know, coach the kids on how to do it better as well. Then. Well, one that I've always used, and we always talk about, you know, I'll find space, all right. But then you see a kid find space, but say behind someone else. So I'm in space over here, but that passing line is covered. So it's like, okay, so it's just changing that word. So can we go and find good space? Yes. Where's the good space that you can find? And in that small-sided game, it's a bit harder, all right, to play, because if the area is smaller, generally, you know, them lines can be filled quicker. But you can just move them. There's not much movement that is needed. So you can just see simple movements, what the players can do to lose a man, to find this good space, to find this passing line. And they always say, what else does it create, right? And it's, okay, you might never get the pass, right? But now, instead of it being a 3v3 all in this tight area, you've now give your mate just a 1v1 because you pulled that defender away. All I did was change the word from space to good space, all right? Because kids had understood that, you know, it wasn't using some high-level technical terms that I've heard on Match of the Day. All right? It was something that a 6-7-year-old could easily understand the difference between good space and bad space.
What were some of the issues of the larger formats of the game?
We were lucky enough at the time, the group that I had, we rotated positions, you know, anyway. So players did get you know, a lot of chances in different positions. But I see, you know, some teams now, and they've got defenders or under sevens, and that's all they play. Right? And if that team is, you know, better than the other team, just count the number of touches that defender will have. We did one over the summer. We were doing a 3v3 event. And on the pitch next to us, we were playing a 9v9 game, and we were talking about this. I said, right, let's pick a player and we'll count how many touches he has. In 15 minutes that we watched him, right, he touched the ball once. Once in 15 minutes. That player, his team won. They absolutely smashed the other team. Right? But he's going home thinking, oh, we've won today, we've done great. It's like, well, okay, I don't know what he did in the rest of the game, but in that 15 minutes we watched him, he touched the ball once. And it was like, regardless of who you are, if that's what you're doing, you know, you're not getting better at all in, you know, from playing that match. So the development of those individual players just isn't there. So the kids, just by being involved more, you could just see the improvement, and more so with like the newer or the lower ability players. It was like a rapid increase that they had in just a few weeks. Just from, you know, numbers, it was just maths really. They were just more involved in the game, you know, practicing, say repeating. They were just doing more of, you know, the basics, and, you know, generally, rather than just running around, letting the strongest player on the team, you know, do everything. And, you know, even at 5-a-side, you'll always still have, you know, a dominant player, you know, that will have the lion's share of the ball for a team. So by having 3v3, and whether it's a side game to your main game, or, you know, it's a training game, so, you know, you'll turn up and you might have, you know, nine players, let's say, example. So you've got 3 teams, you know what I mean, straight away, you know, playing that there. And then, so it's a different game than that you can play. So, you know, you'd easily just go, right, let's have one 3v3, and let's have a 2v1 overload, you know, game at the side. Their players are all involved. So even if, you know, you're not a high-level coach and have loads of time to spend putting plans and sessions together, just putting these goals out and letting the kids play are going to get better than stood behind a cone, waiting the turn, right? You know, I can almost tell what a team's going to be like when in the warm-up, the kids pass the ball to the coach and he sets them up and the coach has more touches, and the kids, it's like, you're not playing. Why are you having all these touches?
Other than the obvious, of it's 3 players, what are some of the the rules or constraints, conditions of 3v3?
You can set, whatever you like, really. Again, depending on what outcome you want from that session. And you might go, right, oh, we need to work on crossing today. Well, that's easy. Just set up them 2 lanes outside. Okay, it's got to get into that lane before it comes, back in before you can score. Or I want, my fullbacks working, higher up with the midfielders or forward, say. Well, again, you just set the constraint where the game can be, right? It's got to be across from this fullback, and he's got to have got in the other half before he can cross it in. Little things like that, whether it's, an individual skill, if you do this skill before you score, it counts as double. Loads of little ways that you can change the game, and you can see it. So it's one of the things that I do with some of our groups sometimes is say, right, you go and, work on like one thing that you've got to do, all right? And let me watch your game and see if I can figure out what you're trying to do. Yeah. And if they keep doing this same like kind of move, you'll go, right, oh, I can see what they're working on there. And they go and do it. So constraints of 3v3, I'd put on, what's your outcome? Now, one of the biggest ones we do is you can only use your other foot. Again, with that repetition of receiving the ball on your other foot, of passing the ball on your other foot, of trying to be a player, of having shots. Literally in an 8-minute game, you can see improvements in the players. In a bigger game, you'll never just play with your other foot. It won't happen. But there's a moment in the game where you'll need it. And that's what you do. You go into your toolbox there and go, boom, I've got this other foot that I can use. Taking that shot on your left foot is always going to be a better option than trying to squeeze your body around and toe poke it with your right foot. Constraints, like say, they can work in so many different ways based on what outcome that you want. And you just that repetition, you get to just practice it more.
So there's no actual rules for 3v3, like kick-ins instead of throw-ins.
We set like tournament rules and we do this, with and without air. So, I've done 3v3 for years without air pitches. So we just mark off an area. And again, depending on what environment we were in. So because it was futsal free, we had a futsal court. So the area was based on the side of the court mainly.
Yeah.
And generally there's a basketball area with the red lines on, and we'd use that. So we've got 3 pitches on an indoor court. When we went outside, we could make it, a bit bigger for players. So different sizes, again, depending on what you want. I remember back to one of my first conversations with Pete Sturgis about 3v3, and I didn't want it to sound like, oh, the air pitches is what everyone needs to buy, and this is the only way 3v3 can be played. It's like, no, to play 3v3, you need 4 cones or even 4 jumpers and a ball, and that's it, and you can go and play. Just playing that simple game, you don't need much equipment at all. Even if you've not got cones for goals, let's play it where you dribble into an area, then to score a goal. Say,
have you seen any good examples of how clubs might utilize 3v3?
So we're fortunate again to do a lot of work with Man United, and I've known the staff there for years. So we've done loads of events, especially for their pre-academy, their under-7s, under-8s. And they invite us in as like the treat. They play 3v3 all the time, and it's always been part of their DNA. Back to the 90s, maybe even earlier, when they brought in like this Dutch Vision game, which was a 4v4 game really to start with, but they mix it up, and they do these small-sided invasion games that they call it. It looks like chaos, right? Just loads of kids, games going all over the place. Coaches, you think these are some of the best coaches in the country, and they stand there and say nothing and let the kids figure it out themselves. So we've been lucky enough to go in there and do loads of events with them, but just going in and watching them play to cones, that's what they'll do on a general week-to-week basis. They'll almost every week they'll be playing some kind of small-sided games as part of their training. Even, I've seen, because I see fixtures and stuff, or when they're asking for fixtures out there, they'll sometimes ask teams to come in and play small-sided games. And some clubs love it, and they do, all the time. And there's still some clubs who go, nah, we want bigger formats, only then.
Where do you see 3v3 going in the future?
So we've been involved in this Future of Youth Football project that the FA have been doing at the moment, and it's looking at other formats of the games. Now this wasn't with air pitches. This was just with using small-sided goals. We've done it in other countries around Europe, especially. So as like Germany have now introduced it. We were a big part of that. Our 3v3 Deutschland. In Norway, again, we've got 3v3 Norway. They do a road show for the FA every week, putting on these 3v3 programs. So, again, looking at the future for what England football and how we can make it better. I'll say it's in a good place now already. The players that are coming through, we see technically how much better they are than 10, 15 years ago. And we just keep on working on this. And if we can make, I'd say, better players for the national team, then brilliant, right? But for me, it's all about this falling in love and staying in love with the game, right? And no matter how old you are, how good you are, right? When you get a ball, we're all a kid inside. Do you want to score goals? You want to beat players? You want something that you can go home and tell someone about. For a kid, that moment that they, will remember, right, will take their love into the game tomorrow. So they'll be in school now today, thinking, hopefully playing football, or thinking of when they're going back to football again. And as we get older, then we have all these dropouts. We need to find a way of keeping players fall in love with the game. As a coach, that's our job. Make the kid come back next week.
Do you think the FA will introduce it as an official format?
Going off, let's say, what's happening with this Future Youth Football and the stats that have now come out, you'd think, it's going to happen. It can happen now. That's the problem. Anyone now can play 3v3. We love the bigger game. We all love watching football on TV because that's football, that big game. And we see kids football as the same thing, and it's not. What are the negatives of 3v3? And why don't some kids like it? And some kids don't like it because it takes them so far out of the comfort zone, right? Then it's an unknown to them. And we've had, again, plenty of examples, whether it is that fitness level or the kids then who, on a bigger pitch, because of their physicality and maybe their speed, they can just bully players and go past them. And they don't have to rely on any technical ability or any brain. Right? They can just win because I'll just beat you because I'm a foot bigger than you at 7. They get found out in a way. And they don't like it because they can't do in there what they can do out there. So it makes these, better technical players, but makes these bigger physical players almost, let's say, come out of the comfort zone. But if they come through it, you think, yeah, they're going to be a better player. But initially, they might not enjoy it because it's hard work for them then. So if the FA introduce this as a game, the biggest negative comment they'll get back is, oh, we need more coaches. Because now, in effect, you've got a squad of 8 now for one team. That's now 2 teams. So they automatically think we need 2 coaches straight away. And we don't, it's easy as a coach to stand in the middle of the both pitches and watch both teams. So you're there as a game manager. If you've got to tell kids, to be doing everything all the time. And I get it, there's some players that need more help than others. But the game, that's the teacher. That's what I always say, that the game's the teacher. The kids will figure it out themselves because of that constant repetition. Just let them play. So you don't need more coaches to do more work. And it's just let the kids play. And all your job is to make the subs and to look after first aid or anything like that. Then. So I'd love to say, lucky enough to have gone through the course, and as a new coach, obviously it's different for us. We've done this now for years, but as a new coach, starting it off, you'd go, okay, how can I help? The coach, your job is to help players, and that's what you want to do. And how can you make them get better individually, better as a team? Say keep coming back to enjoy football, and the course then really breaks down some simple games that you can play. But then goes into more advanced stuff as well as players develop, whether it's because of the age groups that they're in or because of the ability then of the players. I think the course then is there for everyone, and some real good ideas then for coaches to use.
Well, Mike, thanks ever so much for joining us. I think your passion and enthusiasm for 3v3 and what you do and football and kids and environments has shone through. So really appreciate you spending some time with us, and good luck with the 3v3 UK stuff.
No, appreciate having us on. Like I say, I could talk about 3v3 all day because I'm just passionate about players' development, and I think this is a great tool for kids of all ages to play.
Let's go. Yeah.